Hi, everybody. Doug and Alea. And in this session, we want to talk about what happens when you're attacked by an angry person, not physically attacked, but you're verbally attacked by an angry person. And I want to start, and I want to talk about the things that you don't want to do. And you will be surprised at what I have to say. Somebody just attacks you out of the blue. Could be a family member, could be a boss, could be somebody who reports to you, could be anything. And you're gobsmacked because you're taken totally by surprise. All right, there are many reactions that we will have to this angry outburst. Almost all of them make things worse, but it's what we all do because we don't know anything better. So let me just kind of go through the list of things that we do unconsciously, but we shouldn't do, and I'll explain why. So maybe the first thing that we do is we get defensive. And so when we get defensive, we want to avoid the conflict, and maybe we're going to try to smooth over the conflict, smooth over the anger. So getting defensive then is going to lead to appeasing behaviors, where you're going to try to please the person and try to get them to not be angry anymore. The problem with the defensiveness and appeasing, like just about every other strategy that we try to use, is that it is in direct contradiction to what's going on inside this angry person's body. We have a system in our body called the polyvagal system that connects the brain to our guts, our viscera. And one of the purposes of the polyvagal system is to determine whether or not people around us are safe or dangerous. And when somebody's really angry, they're a part of their polyvagal system called the unmyelinated system, or the old polyvagal system, is activated. And so this person is really in a fear-based place at an unconscious level. And when you try to appease and look soft and what you are really doing is looking weak and dangerous. And that's why when you try to appease people, oftentimes they will escalate in their anger. So do not appease. The second thing that we might do is we might try to justify or rationalize or explain ourselves. Now again, we're defended, we're being blamed, somebody's screaming at us, and we say something, well, no, you've got it all wrong. That's not what happened at all. The moment you do that, you're emotionally invalidating the anger. And all you will do is make the angry person even angrier. And we see this all the time. So you don't want to get defensive and appease. You don't want to justify, explain, or rationalize. Remember, the rule is you cannot solve an emotional problem with logic or rationality. You've got to solve emotional problems with emotional skills. The third thing you might try to do is to apologize. And again, this is sort of a form of appeasing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. Well, people will apologize. First of all, they don't know how to give a proper apology. Second, most of the time when somebody gets angry at you, it's because you haven't done anything wrong. They're just triggered, and you happen to be the safe target in the moment. So your apology is a false apology because you're not the person at fault. So the rule is never apologize until a person's calmed down. Apology is a problem solving. It's a way of making amends. And you don't make amends to somebody who's super, super angry. You only make amends to people who are calm after the anger is passed. So and then of course, the other way of dealing with anger is to get counter-aggressive. And that means shouting back. Well, there are times when this might be effective, but the risk of becoming counter-aggressive is that the conflict escalates and really gets out of control and can even move towards incipient violence. None of these are good strategies, and yet they're strategies that we all default to unconsciously because we haven't learned effective ways of what to do when somebody is angry at us. So what should we do? Well, the first thing to do is to think about what emotions are triggered within yourself when somebody gets angry at you and starts blaming and shaming you and is using loud, vulgar words, and their face is red and they're spitting on you with their spittle. And I mean, it's intense. So the first thing that you want to do is categorize what your likely emotional reactions are going to be. And what are they going to be? It might be anger, or the anger emotions like irritation, annoyance, rage.
Fear.
What?
Fear.
We'll get to fear. That's the third level. The second level might be you feel this is unfair and unjust, and you don't feel supported and appreciated, and you feel completely disrespected. The third layer are the fear emotions: fear, anxiety, scared, terrified. The fourth level might be guilt, shame, embarrassment, humiliation. The fifth level might be distress and upset. And the last level might be abandonment, fear of loss of connection, betrayal, and not being loved, being rejected. So what you want to do is, if you think about emotions in those layers, is just think about what emotions am I likely to experience if somebody I know starts screaming at me and I'm taken completely by surprise. And then you want to get into the habit of telling yourself what you feel. Oh, right now I feel really angry. I'm really frustrated. I feel disrespected. This is not fair. I don't feel like I'm being treated fairly. Or you might go further down the list. I feel really anxious, worried, and concerned. I'm a little scared of this person. And you might say, I feel a lot of guilt. And I'm embarrassed and humiliated by this person. I feel upset and distressed. And I feel betrayed and abandoned. And I feel like I've been completely rejected as a human being. The moment you start doing that, what brain science shows is you will immediately start calming yourself down. So that's one strategy for dealing with a vicious verbal attack, is just label your own emotions, remain in silence, let them keep going at you. Eventually they'll quiet down. The other strategy is to do exactly the same thing, but label this angry person's emotions. So that would be something like, oh, you're really pissed off. You're really angry. You're just enraged, and you feel like you've been completely disrespected and ignored, unsupported, unappreciated. You're really anxious and worried and concerned. You're really upset and distressed. You feel really embarrassed, and you've been humiliated, which drives you crazy. And you feel like you've been completely abandoned and betrayed and rejected. And the whole thing just infuriates you.
And with that, it's okay to repeat yourself.
Absolutely.
When you're validating somebody's emotions.
That's right. What brain science shows is when you use this technique called affect labeling, the emotional centers of the angry person's brain are going to immediately be inhibited. They're going to diminish in activity. And at the same time, the thinking function, the executive function of the brain in the right ventral lateral prefrontal cortex is going to get activated. Because what happens is when people get really angry and emotional, the emotions completely shut down the thinking part of the brain. And we've all seen this. You can't
think clearly.
You cannot think clearly when you're angry because your prefrontal cortex has been completely overwhelmed by the emotional signals from your brain.
And when you're highly empathic, you can actually shut your brain down, which is why you want to emotionally validate yourself, which then brings your brain back online.
If you want to practice affect labeling in really safe places, and you want to get it to a point where it's just a natural thing that you do, and there are amazing benefits that flow from doing this work. When you finally get good enough where it's a skill that it has become habitual with you, which takes about 4 to 6 weeks of constant practice to really habituate it, what you will find is when this angry person starts yelling at you, you will not be scared. You will not be defensive. You will not feel the need to be counter-aggressive. You won't need to appease or apologize or justify or rationalize or explain. You say, you'll know I am dealing with an upset, emotional person. And I know that the only way to deal with an upset, emotional person is to tell them how they're feeling, to affect label them. In other words, you will know what to say, how to say it, when to say it, no matter the intensity of the situation. And in every single instance, you will calm that person down in less than a minute and a half. And every human brain is hardwired to respond this way. Alea?
So I'm going to approach it from a slightly different perspective, because that's all fascinating, and what happens in the body and the ways in which we can respond, ways we don't want to respond. But the two pieces that I want to talk about with anger have to do with when you're energetically sensitive, empathic, ponder the idea that when someone is angry, they might be angry. There's so many reasons why we can be angry, but they might be angry because they are at a place in their evolution and their journey where they use the anger to grab other people's power. So we would call that like a power grab. Because when somebody's angry, there's lots of stuff going on inside them. Maybe they're afraid, they might have fear of loss, they might have a need that isn't getting met. And their energetic response is to grab another person's power, i.e., if they're angry at you, they might try to grab your power. And then you feel kind of hollowed out. It can hit you in the solar plexus, which is your power center. And there's a whole energetic process that you can do to help recover from a power grab that I have in the daily cups that I do and in different empathic protocols that I have created. But the short solution is inviting some energetic aspect of you to retrieve all of your power nuggets off of everyone that's ever attacked you, get that power back, clean it, recalibrate it, reweave it in your own energetic fields. So the power grab, anger moment. The other piece around anger is when you, as an empath or somebody who is of service and you want to help, you want to make things better, but you might take a little responsibility for people being calm, for people being safe, for people being supportive, for people being happy. And anytime we take responsibility for another person's journey, we're essentially holding something that doesn't belong to us. We're stealing. We're actually out of energetic integrity. And so sometimes people get angry at us because they can feel how we're holding responsibility for their journey, their reality, their life, and they'll actually use the anger trying to get that responsibility back. And again, using your energetic fields, you can return that responsibility back to them, send appropriate energetic information. So those are two other slightly different perspectives on anger. They do have energetic solutions that you can bring in, but ponder people who are angry at you. Are they grabbing your power because they have a particular need and that's just the way that they're energetically functioning? They might not even know it. Or is it that you're taking responsibility for something that isn't yours and they're getting angry and they're trying to use that anger to retrieve that responsibility?